I'm Lance with Verivest, and today I have with me Ben Appleby. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing well, Lance, and yourself?
Doing great, man. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Awesome, yeah.
So why don't you kind of just share with us a little bit about how'd you end up getting into the real estate business and sort of what led you to start your own firm?
Yeah, how I got into the real estate business. I was born and raised here in Dallas, Texas. Come from a family of two small business owners. I'm the oldest of three kids. And I'm a third generation Oklahoma Sooner. So I go to the University of Oklahoma and I fall in love with branding. And I thought I wanted to go to work for a big marketing or public relations firm. And I started interviewing my junior year, and I started, talking with these firms. And I realized that no matter where you work, you're going to make $24,000 a year coming out of school. And I thought to myself, well, I'm too much of a capitalist for that. I can't live in New York or Chicago for $24,000 a year. And so I came home and to my dad, who's a tool salesman, I said, Dad, I love this, but I can apply these skills somewhere else. What do you think I should do? And said, I've got a couple of buddies from church who are in commercial real estate. You should go talk to them. And so I did that, and through, it's crazy how you find what you're looking for if you work hard enough. But, this guy sent me to this guy, this guy sent me to this guy. And I landed an internship with Duke Realty Corporation, which is a publicly traded REIT out of Indianapolis. And the gentleman, Jeff Turner, who ran the Dallas office, who ended up running the western half of the United States, said, I don't have a job for you, but I can give you 3 months and I'll introduce you to my contacts. You'll find a job. And within about 6 hours of my first day there, I decided I wanted a job to do because the culture there was fantastic. It was their newest office nationally. They were vertically integrated. They had all their services in-house. It was really, and it was a small team. And so I bugged Jeff 46 straight days to let me lease a space in his portfolio. And finally he said, fine, kid, take this space out by the old Texas Stadium. We've had it for 4.5 years. Nobody's leased it. And I knocked on doors and made a ton of calls. And 4 days later, I toured it. And 4 days after that, we got it leased. And so I know that there was a tremendous amount of luck there, but I kept taking on these small assignments. And finally, after 8 months, Jeff gave me a job at Duke Realty Corporation, being an industrial leasing agent. And about 3 months after that, I decided that I was in love with value office. I was driving up in the Plano and Frisco area back before it was tremendously developed. Yeah. And I kept seeing these low-rise tilt-wall office buildings and kept seeing all these houses starting. And I went to Jeff and I said, Jeff, I know this probably puts me out of a job that I've worked tremendously hard to get, but I want to investigate value office. And he said, actually, that doesn't put you out of a job. He goes, we're the only office in the United States that doesn't do suburban office. We only do industrial because I've only ever done industrial. He goes, I'm not going to put my neck on the line with investment committee for introducing this idea, but you're 22 and I'm glad to put your neck on the line if you're willing to put it there. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I would love to go and to research the market and see if there's an opportunity for us to buy land and develop value office. And sure enough, we put together 3 tracts in Frisco, Texas, which at the time was a small municipality, equaling 70 acres. And we started development about a year after I started that journey of going out and talking to landowners and all of that. And over 6.5 years at Duke, I was lucky enough to help start our office, suburban office development group in Dallas. And we developed almost 1.2 million square feet in 3 different municipalities on the northern side of Dallas, Texas. And it was a tremendous learning opportunity. From there, I left to help grow the Dallas office for a company called Madison Marquette, which was previously called PM Realty Group. And it was a wonderful opportunity to get on the third-party side of the business and learn, how to compete in that environment. Not with, at Duke, if I could get it through investment committee, I had an ATM in my front yard, right? I mean, it's publicly traded funds. So going about it this way, I really learned to build a third-party portfolio and what both institutional and sub-institutional clients expect of their service providers.
Mm-hmm.
And over 4 years there, I figured out that there was this great trend happening. This is from 2010 to 2014. There was a private equity flood coming to Dallas. So I moved our portfolio. I built it initially with institutional clients because that's the background that I had.
Mm-hmm.
But I moved it to sub-institutional clients because there was so much suburban product that they were buying. And the company didn't so much like that. They were more interested in having national account relationships. And I could see the writing on the wall. And honestly, I developed by that time what I felt was a really good service model for how I could be an excellent service provider to our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to go out and to start my own company.
So that's Dogwood Commercial. That's when you
Yeah.
It, yeah.
Sorry. He was adjusting the noise so that it wouldn't ding every time I get an email. So sorry. So yeah, in 2014, I saw the opportunity to go out and to start what was at the time called Paladin Partners. We've rebranded the Dogwood Commercial in 2019, but I started it just as a brokerage firm. I hired 2 young guys straight out of college. I was determined to hire these guys straight out of college, build gritty leasing agents, and build a great third-party leasing group that focused on Class B to A- suburban product.
Mm-hmm.
So we were building this portfolio, about 3.5 million square feet over the first 2 years. And then the price of construction started going up at a greater clip than what suburban rents would ever support. I'm kind of a data geek, so I'll bring this all together.
Yeah.
So 8% year-over-year construction increase, 2.5% annual rent bumps. At some point, people are going to stop transacting. So I said, I want to investigate the third part, the general contracting business. And so I went and looked at the opportunities in the interior general contracting space. And at that point, I started a general contracting company in 2016, focused on interior construction and office buildings. And the reason I did that was being the son of a tool salesman, I grew up around a ton of tradesmen.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I know the mind of a tradesman. And so I looked at how everybody was doing this. They were making the tradesmen buy the materials. Then they weren't paying them until 30 days after they got paid for the job. And so you're keeping them away from money for 105 days. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go directly to the manufacturers. I'm going to buy material in bulk, and I'm going to pay my tradesmen every Friday. I'm going to pay my subs every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And my thesis was I'm going to be able to squeeze material costs. I also negotiate my own logistics, squeeze material costs, and I'm going to get lower labor pricing because of it. And sure enough, it worked. And so we had brokerage and construction. And then about 3 months after that, one of our clients came to us and said, you guys need to be in the management business. And I said, we started 2 companies in the last 2 years. I'm really overwhelmed. They said, well, how about if we give you 700,000 square feet of office to start on? And so I said, we're in the management business. And so in early 2017, kind of woke up and we had brokerage, management, construction. We had a vertically integrated asset services supply chain. And already we were going after kind of Class B to B plus product. But what that allowed us to do was to go to potential buyers and say, we'll help you buy product. We'll implement a construction strategy. We'll execute the CapEx or deferred maintenance. We'll lease it up, and then we're going to manage that. And we're going to get you to a point where you can exit and return on capital, right? And so we did 11 of those projects. And then in early 2018, I was approached by a gentleman who had just started a private equity company in Dallas. And he said, hey, and I went to the meeting thinking I was pitching him on the service company.
Right.
He stopped me and he said, hey, I'm not looking for a service provider. I'm looking for a partner. And so that was a very important day because that got us into the ownership business.
Yeah.
And in that partnership, we purchased 6 office buildings totaling 700,000 square feet over a 9-month period. And we've executed really well on those opportunities. But it was a very important point in time because the day after we closed on the first building, I took a sheet of paper that had all of our investors and the amount that they put in. And I went to our team and I said, hey, these are real people and these are real dollars that they have. And we're no longer, we need to shift our focus from being service providers to being stewards of capital.
Right.
And that was an important day for our company because I think it speaks to the testament of our team members.
Mm-hmm.
But since that day moving forward, everybody has gotten significantly better at what they do, at their, unique differentiators. Every day they lean more into those and we continue to tighten the machine. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to get into the ownership business because it has really produced a level of performance and a level of passion in our teams that I hadn't seen before. And then after those 6 buildings, that private equity group started to focus to industrial. And I wasn't done buying office buildings, so I formed Dogwood Capital. And early this year, we closed on our first office building, 110,000 square feet inside the Loop in Dallas in June. And we've got another project under contract right now on Preston Road. And so we're really excited to be where we are today.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So with that said, how do you guys go about sourcing your deal flow? Like what is your acquisition strategy? How are you unearthing those opportunities?
Yeah, it's kind of a 2-pronged approach. The first prong is, again, it kind of goes back to being a data geek, right? I will go and look at underserved assets in good markets. So the location has to be good. The demographics have to be right. Median income going up, median age coming down. They have to be traditionally strong markets. And then you look for the assets where the owners have forgotten how to spend capital on the buildings, where they have, dated lobbies, dated corridors, no amenities. And then I will go and find, loan docs. I'll use my relationships with title guys to find the loan docs, understand what the purchase prices were. And we'll go and underwrite those and kind of figure out where we think they go from black to red. So if you use the historical rent numbers, you go and you underwrite the assets, and then you come to a range where you feel like once they cross under, that occupancy point, that they're going to be more apt to sell, right? Because a lot of these folks are coastal owners, a lot of California and a lot of New York, some international, but a lot of legacy family assets. So 2nd or 3rd generation is now in charge of what, their parents or grandparents had purchased, and the level of connection to the asset is not as great. Right. And so, so once they start getting really close to that occupancy number, I start calling, and that is more of a time intensive and just volume heavy, a lot of phone calls and a lot of follow up and a lot of follow up, but it has produced, our first 7 buildings. So up to this point, we have not purchased a building that wasn't off market.
Nice.
And you find great basis assets that way. And so it is absolutely worth it. And building the companies the way that I have, I'm a big believer in building self-managed companies. And so, giving responsibility to folks and watching them be great at what they're great at, it really has freed me up to work on tightening the machine, on getting better with our vertically integrated platform, and then going out and looking for those opportunities and doing the things necessary to prudently underwrite them. The second prong is I will see assets that come to market through a traditional brokerage environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll call the broker and I'll figure out what the whisper price is. And on a lot of these suburban Class B to A- buildings, 70 to 200,000 square feet, I know that they're never going to get their whisper number. I know they're not going to get close to what they want. And so I let that sales process go all the way through. And after the best and final date, I'll wait about 3 days usually and call the broker and be like, all right, well, who'd y'all go with? And I know the answer to the question, right? They have not met the number that they need.
Yeah.
And so the next question is, all right, well, how bad do they want to get rid of it? And maybe there's somewhere where we can give them a graceful exit and we can get the basis that we need to transact. And so, the one that I have under contract right now was that way, and one that I'm really working on getting under contract right now came through that second prong. So using those two approaches, we identify the assets, and then it's just a matter of finding making the right call on the right day on those off market assets. Really trying to build relationships a little bit at a time with the sellers and those that they trust, so that we can be the first one they think of when it's time to unload.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for you then, do you limit it to kind of DFW, Houston, or like Oklahoma City, or like what are the markets that you're executing that sort of strategy in?
Yeah. Well, being so new to the acquisition game, right now we're just in Dallas.
Just in Dallas, okay.
So yeah, because I'll tell you this: these opportunities are not attractive to institutional buyers, right. And they're not even attractive to larger private equity groups. To do what we do with the full CapEx implementation and adding amenities and repositioning, it's a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And the last 10 years in Dallas, there's a lot easier ways to make decent returns in Dallas, but these groups do not want to put in the type of effort that you have to make fantastic returns. And that's where we can go. And Dallas has a fairly deep pond of opportunity. My pipeline list right now is 18 buildings long of deals that I think, in the next 2 years that I would like to get a hold of. And they're deals that people just don't know about. Because there's a lot of underserved products. Dallas has been a development heavy market. And so there's always something new. And that means that you get these 20 to 35-year-old assets that just don't get the appropriate capital.
Right.
But on the horizon, there are a couple of markets that I really like. San Antonio is a fantastic market to execute our game plan. And I've already started with my research and been down there a couple of times identifying the right corridors, using demographics there. I like Little Rock, Arkansas a lot. I like Oklahoma City. Those are three markets, the next three markets that I would see us going to implement our particular acquisition strategy.
Yeah.
And inside of Dallas, I just to get a touch more granular on you, inside of Dallas, assets along US 75, south of Allen and north of Uptown, along LBJ between 75 and I-35, and along the tollway north of Preston Center to George Bush. Those three corridors, specifically within Dallas, is where I'm concentrating, because the median income and population and access to good public schools, or the median income to support private school education, all works in those areas. And there are a lot of good opportunities in those areas. So right now I can focus just on these areas where I know if we basis those assets right, we can be successful, and we can be great stewards of our investor capital.
Yeah. And I suppose too, with this, the sort of post-COVID environment, obviously office is at the center of this sort of, is it good or not? And it seems the sentiment is that, suburban office should make a comeback. Obviously you're bullish on office, but for those that, maybe are skittish about, office in general, how do you sort of speak to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So looking at the data of Dallas in particular, but it's also supported in some of the other markets that I told you.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime there's market correction, the product that gets hit the hardest is your Class AA, your trophy, and the worst of the product. And so I call the buildings that we buy and improve and stabilize up and down buildings, because they sit between a rent brackets where you're going to catch people on the way up and you're going to catch people on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
So right now you have all these folks in Uptown that are paying 50 plus gross rent per square foot rent, that, you know, the attraction of being in the prettiest thing to compete for talent is not near as great as it was 6 to 12 months ago. And you're seeing a lot of sublease space pop up there. Same thing in the legacy area of Plano. And what's right in the middle? The 3 markets that I told you about. So we're seeing a lot of people going away from the more expensive product. The other thing about the assets that we look for are, you know, 80s vintage product is not terribly efficient for what today's large user wants. So we're not targeting buildings where you're going to see a lot of 25,000 plus square foot tenants.
Right.
We've done, you know, in our portfolio, we've done out of 800 square feet, we've done 4 deals over 25,000 square feet in the last 2 years. But everything else is really 15,000 square feet and down is where we really specialize. And the great line share of that is between 5 and 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And so we look for assets where one of the secret sauce deals is you can find great assets to buy if you look for somebody who lost a large tenant and has spent 2 to 2.5 years trying to backfill that with another large tenant.
Yeah.
And that interest carry and now their investors starting to lose confidence, and the capital call comes and they say, we don't want to, I mean, like this is a real deal. I'm a huge proponent of spec suites, because in the 6 years that we've had the brokerage company, we've implemented with every one of our clients. Some clients will be reluctant for a day. Some clients will be reluctant for 2 years, but eventually we show them the data that we have on spec suite, both construction and performance, and they eventually will allow us to do spec suites, and our performance on that platform has been significantly better. So owning a general contracting company, I can tell you that the deals that we do where it's just second gen space and we allow the tenants to design them versus our spec suite program, there's a 20% reduction in TI costs. Because we're letting them spend money. They are not going to think about the future leasability of the product. They're going to overspend on things that don't add value.
Yep.
Whereas we go and build, you know, in bulk, we can go and get the materials in bulk, all the things I was talking about. And then we can lay out the space for future use. So we get to control the layout, the downtime, the amount of free rent, the rental rates. So downtime is less, free rent is less, rental rates are higher. It has been a very successful approach for us. Most people are scared of spec suites because the capital spend gets out of control. Yeah. Owning a construction firm, we can control that. So to answer your question directly, we have found post-COVID that there's not been that great of a slowdown in the under 10,000 square foot deal activity. Texas, the makeup of Texas' state legislature has quorum without one Democrat present. And regardless of your politics, that is going to produce a great business environment. It is very much an open market, and you have a very resilient small business community in North Texas. And so when COVID hit, we saw all the large tenants throughout both our third party and owned portfolio come to us and say, well, we need rent relief for a year just because did they need it or not? Who knows? But they have leverage, right?
Yeah.
Our small business owners kept working, even if they weren't using the office space. You know, I called, between me and 4 other people, we called every tenant in our portfolios just to check on them. And hey, we're working. We've got people working at home. Zoom calls every day. I mean, we have an extremely resilient small business community here. And so that's one thing that gives me a lot of confidence, because we've seen a tremendous amount of leasing activity through COVID from our 1 to 10,000 square foot tenants.
Oh, that's great. So like in addition to yourself, I mean, who are the other kind of key players that, I mean, given that you have kind of this vertical integration, and who are the other key people that make it all go around on your team?
Yeah. So on our brokerage team, Travis Moore and Austin Bussey, who those two guys, day one, straight out of college, there were 3 in the first 2 months, and Travis and Austin were 2 of them. Those guys run our brokerage team now and run all of our leasing agents. And I raised them on very difficult products and in difficult markets, and they turned into really resilient, gritty leasing agents. And they teach that same program to our guys, and it's been really awesome to watch them develop into great leaders. Joe Zilka, who's our COO, oversees operations between the 3 companies, and then our property management group. Armando Lopez runs our construction company, and I call the construction company the secret sauce, because being able to control capital outlay.
Yeah.
So when I'll competitively bid 5 or 6 jobs, a year, just to make sure that the thesis is still solid. And over the 4 years and probably 25 to 30 competitive bid jobs that we've done, that we control, we compete for business all the time, but that our management team controls. On average, we're 22% lower than the next lowest bidder.
Wow.
And still able to be profitable. And so Armando is the smartest construction mind that I've ever met. He's a pleasure to work with. And, when we close on these or when we get the buildings under contract, Armando and I lock ourselves in a closet and we start going to work on every last little detail of the CapEx, because speed to market is so important. And so by the time we close, and I think this is a little bit of our value addition model, is the fact that we know this so intimately that we can hit the ground running day one.
Yeah.
One of the things that led me into this particular execution strategy is those 11 projects that I talked about that we did for others, help them buy the buildings and implement. They would have their investors come and meet with me, and I would sell them on the execution model. And then I would watch each of those clients. They would do about 50 to 70% of what they told their investors that they would do. And it really upset me, because I was like, I'm selling your investors on this plan. We have the money for it, but
right.
You don't want to spend it.
Right.
You don't want to commit to the plan. Yeah. You're afraid to swing. Yeah. And so, when we started this, I said, the 2 things that we're going to do is we're going to think every day about how we can stretch every dollar, because protecting our investor capital has got to be the number 1 goal. And number 2, we're going to be prepared the day we close. So on each of our repositioning projects, I've had guys in there doing work on common area, either the day we close or the day after. We've got the permits, we have the plan, we have the CapEx down to the dollar of where we're going to spend it. And what we do in the 60 to 90 days between our due diligence and closing period is, Armando and I and our leasing guys and Joe, we all get together and we set the strategy. We design the spec suites. We've got relationships with our manufacturers where they'll start sending the materials so that we have the ability to execute day one. I'll give you an example. The building that we just purchased 60 days ago. We have completely renovated the lobby. We're 70% done with all the corridors. We've completely transformed the parking garage. We've sealed all the exterior windows. We're repainting the outside, all in 60 days. And not to mention, we've raised the occupancy from 66% to 80% within 60 days. And we're executing those TI jobs, because this is what we love to do. And setting that strategy and figuring out how we're going to take that fantastic basis that we've gotten and execute that plan. It is so critical to do it before you close, because I kept watching our clients. They would close, and then they'd kind of figure out what they wanted to do, and they'd bring in some outside consultants that kind of knew what they were doing, but they brought in Class AA consultants for a Class B building. And so 9 months later, we're finally competitively bidding the project.
Right.
And then a year later, they finally start executing the plan. And meanwhile, they have investors who are expecting a return of capital, and I'm pushing, and we're not making any progress. And so I figured out that there are not very many people that are good at what we do, and we just so happen to be very good at that.
No, that's great. Well, that's good stuff. Yeah. And yeah, thanks for sharing the story, and it's exciting stuff you guys got going on over at Dogwood. So yeah, have a great day. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Lance.
All right. Take care.